Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing Facebook Live. It's a beautiful, cool day in November. And yeah, we're still out in the garden. So what a great autumn we've had for gardening weather. What are we going to do today? We're going to plant a tree. It's a little late now, probably, for doing perennials. They may not have time to get themselves settled in. Trees, shrubs, roses, no problem. It's not just bulb planting season. The ground is still fairly warm. There's definitely no frost in the ground. We're getting some surface frost every morning, but that's okay. But it's still lots of time to plant the big stuff, and many garden centers are clearing stuff out. They want to get rid of the last bit of remaining stock from this year, and you can get some great deals, like the great deal we got on this weeping larch. So this is a Larix Eurolepis varied directions. It's one of the weeping larches. It's called varied directions because the stems do just that. They kind of come out in all directions and sort of here and there wherever they feel like. But the beauty is, starting size like this, we can train it to however we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to make this guy a replacement for a weeping blue Atlas cedar. We're way out of the blue Atlas cedar hardiness zones. But you know, every time I've gone to England, and I've been to Bressingham Gardens a couple of times, and they have some magnificent weeping larches, or weeping blue Atlas cedars. One that they've made a tunnel with so that you can walk through it from one part of the garden to another. So that's what we're going to try and do with this guy. We're going to put it in the front bed. We were in this bed a couple of weeks ago when we moved a peony in here. We're going to put this larch in here as well, and hopefully train at least one of the stems or two of the stems over the pathway and make sort of a living arch there. So that'll take a few years, but we'll see how it goes. At any rate, we're going to plant the tree today. We're going to look at how to get that tree in the ground properly, because it's got a couple of things going on here. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to move it up out of the way just a little bit for the moment. And I'm going to get in here into the bed. And we're going to get a hole dug where we're going to plant it. This grass is only, we just moved him, so I'm just going to pop him out of the way. So we're going to get a hole dug. Now, when we're digging a hole, hey Lupin, when we're digging a hole for a tree, you gonna help? You gonna help dig? Hey, you gonna help dig? Look at the pot you're in. Look at the size of the root ball. Because if you look at the size of this root ball, you're gonna see that we're no deeper. Can you see this, Laura?
Yeah.
That we're no deeper than basically the blade of a shovel. And that is how deep you want to plant. Very important not to plant your trees and shrubs too deep. So if we're about 3 inches, 4 inches down, we're going to go a little deeper, then we should be good. Very sandy soil here, of course. We get down through sort of the top part that we've amended over the years. Then we go down about 4 or 5 inches, and we're right into our beach sand. Easy part there, no problem. That's really all we need to dig, I think. Now, looking at this tree, we see that we've got it in a plastic pot. Lupin, no. We see that we've got it in a plastic pot, but as many garden centers do, this tree came into them No, Lupin, stop. Stop digging. This tree came into them in a burlap or balled and burlapped state, meaning the root ball was soil, was wrapped in burlap, and then tied around the trunk. Very difficult way for a garden center to look after a plant. So often they'll get dropped into a plastic pot. Honestly, this may have even been grown on the West Coast, balled and burlapped, and then the nursery here might have dropped it into the plastic pot too, just for ease of transportation and ease of looking after it in the garden center. But that presents us with a couple of problems we're going to look at in a second. So it's in a fairly heavy soil mix, but we're going to take it and we're going to get it out of this pot. Shouldn't be too hard to get out, but we'll just make sure we get it loosened. And then we can just slide it out. So here we go. You can see we've got lots of great roots. Still lots of new root growth happening. You can see the nice white tips here. So we're going to do, but it's a pretty solid mass of root. So we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to get in and we're going to tease some of these roots out. I always like to tease out some roots so that these roots, if they're going to put on some more growth this fall, and they might, they're going to get right out into the existing soil right away. Pretty firm. A lot of burlap still intact here, but it's starting to rot. You can see the burlap is just simply rotting and falling apart. That's what it's supposed to do. So we'll get a bit of loosening done. Not bad, not bad. All right. Now, the part that's tricky with this guy is this part. When you're planting a tree, you don't want to plant it too deep. You want to have the root flare showing, but on younger trees, you may not know where that root flare is. So in this case, we're not really looking for a root flare, but we're going to look for the topmost root. So we're going to undo this. Now this is interesting. This is an important thing. You see the burlap, when it's in one layer, it's rotting and falling apart very quickly. When you tie it and make like a burlap rope out of it, all of a sudden, it doesn't want to rot and give away. You have to remove that from the trunk of the tree when you've got burlap. So we got a bit of rope here. We're going to get rid of that. But look at how tight that burlap is around the trunk. So we need to get rid of it all. If that was just plunked in because somebody told you the burlap will just rot away, this could take a couple of years to rot away. And in the meantime, you're strangling your tree. So be really careful of that. So see, that's actually a burlap bag that it went into. So that's actually a whole bag there that we're going to get rid of. Now, often on the nurseries, when these things are done in balled and burlapped, even in containers now, if they're field grown, they're dug by a machine. They're not dug by hand anymore. A machine comes along, cuts around them, scoops under, and then drops them into the burlap bag or into a pot. Great for productivity, not always great for the gardener. Because what happens, let me get this burlap out of here. Look at how tight that burlap is that was above the ground. You almost can't even cut the stuff. Now, not that my pruners are probably very sharp, but still, it's still in really, really good condition. So there we go. So we got to get rid of these weeds. No sense putting weeds into the ground for us to pull out later. Mostly a bit of grass. But what we're looking for is where the topmost root is. And in fact, here it is right here. That's going to be our planting level. So we need to now look at this tree and decide, and I think the way I'm looking at it's going to be the way I want to see it when I come up the stairs from the rock garden. So we're going to creep over to our hole and let's just have a look here. Let's measure. Topmost root, right about there. Planting hole, maybe a little deep. So we're going to put a little bit of soil back in. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to have too much loose soil at the bottom of a hole. So we're going to just firm that down. Double check our depth. Yeah, we're good now. Diameter wise, yeah, I think we're perfect. All right, so this is the side I want. We've loosened the roots. We've got rid of the constricting burlap. We've got the topmost root where we can see it. We've got our hole dug, proper depth, proper width. Now, you'd be inclined perhaps to grab the tree here and just lift it in, but that can damage some of the roots. You might break some roots trying to do that. So try to be a little bit careful. This is fairly heavy, but I'm going to move it in with my spade. I'll use my spade to help me lift it and set it in the hole. All right, we're almost there. Now we want to move it around. Ideally, don't grab it by the trunk when you're doing this. Try to keep the root ball intact. And there we go. That's got the side I want. Looking good from coming up from the base here. So we've got our top root right there, right even with the soil line. Now we're going to backfill. Notice we're not amending the soil at all. Many long-term studies that have been done in the last couple of decades have shown us that when you're planting a tree, let the tree know what it's getting into. When I started in the garden centers, I was told I had to dig a hole 3 times as large as my tree, add triple mix, manure, peat moss, all those things to the planting hole to give the tree a good kickstart. And yes, it does give the tree a good kickstart. But if you were in heavy clay soil, that tree will never root out into the clay. It'll stay in that nice light mix of manure and peat moss and triple mix, because why would its roots leave a good thing? In our sandy soil, probably wouldn't make as much difference, but we still plant it, allowing the roots to get to the existing soil right away. The other thing you need to do, really put the boots to it. You don't want air pockets down there. I'm going to move some soil in, level it out. Now, another thing that you can do to help your tree Make a bit of a watering well here. It's only temporary. But when you water, that'll allow the moisture to stay at the roots and soak it in. Now, this has been staked in the nursery to keep the tree straight. It's moving around, it's getting packed on tree trucks and things. We're gonna take this stake out. Move that out of the way. It's a nice fiberglass pole. We're gonna remove any elasticy name tags and things like that. These old plastic straps, because these things don't give up as the tree is growing. More often than not, they'll stay on the tree and they'll start strangling the tree. So there we go. We've got our tree planted. We're going to water it in well. We're going to pile some leaves over the soil here to keep the soil warm for a while. It'll likely do some rooting in while the tree is still nice and green. Remember, being a larch, this is going to lose its leaves. Now, staking. Staking is an issue. Most times, plants don't need to be staked. Most trees. It is really important to allow a tree to do this. This kind of movement helps strengthen the tree and it strengthens the trunk. So it's important not to impede that. Old staking procedures, and you'll still see them used today, stake trees at 4 feet off, so detrimental to trees. The trees need to be able to move like this so the trunks get stronger. If your tree is in a really windy spot, there's going to be a lot of traffic around it, meaning there might be kids coming around, swinging on the trunks and things like that, then you might need to stake. If you need to stake a tree when you're planting it, you put a stake in and you have your stake about a foot off the ground. In England, they do their stake on an angle, sort of like this. And tie it here with this point facing the the wind. What am I trying to say? The prevailing wind, that's the word, prevailing wind. And that will help keep it steady. All you want to do when you're staking a tree is keep the root ball steady. So we probably will stake this because it's November and we're just coming into winter season. So we'll probably stake it. We're going to stake it down here like this. We're going to leave it for one season, and that's it. You don't want to leave a tree staked for years. There's no reason to leave a tree staked for years. One season is plenty. And there we go. Laura, whoops.
Got a mouse.
We got a mouse. Oh, good for him. All right. We'll get that dog working in the garden yet. All right. So there it is. Our new larch. Now, what are we going to do with this as it grows? I said we want to get it to behave a bit like the weeping blue Atlas cedar. So what we're going to do, and we won't do it now, we'll do it next spring, is we're probably going to take a couple of these branches, probably like that, and stake these branches or wire these branches so they grow in this direction. Or with weeping trees, they're interesting because you can manipulate a young weeping tree however you want. This guy will predominantly be this height. It'll put a little bit more height on as it grows. But if you want to make it taller, what you can do is you can stake it, and you could stake one of the leading branches up a little higher. That you can do. And what that'll do is that'll cause these branches to then be the height. If you want it higher, maybe wait a season or look for another ascending branch like this one. Stake that branch up, and then all of a sudden you've got a 6.5 foot tall weeping larch. That's actually what we may do, is I may take this branch, get it some more height, and then maybe allow this one to be the one that cascades over the walkway. But we're going to leave it for now and just let it get settled in. So all we have left to do now is give it a good watering, soak it, make sure there's no more air pockets with soaking, and we'll cover it with mulch, we'll cover it with leaves, and then we'll leave it alone until spring. Have we got any questions today, Laura?
A couple of things, a comment. So Jane, who was on one of the trips, agrees that those blue Atlas cedars were stunning and one of her favorites as well.
It's one of my favorite trees, and I wish we could grow them here, but we just can't do it here in our climate. Deep southern Ontario, yeah, you can grow them, but not up here, unfortunately.
So she was asking about what you were planning to do in terms of support. So that was the answer to that. Sophie had asked a question about digging the hole twice as big, amending the soil, which you answered.
I'm going to just reiterate that a little bit. If you've got really heavy soil, you can certainly dig the hole wider and loosen some of that soil up. That'll give the tree a little bit easier start, but don't amend it. Just loosen the existing soil, but never go deeper. It's important that you don't go deeper. You want the tree sitting on as solid a surface as possible so that it doesn't settle lower and then become planted too deep. All tree roots grow horizontally. No trees, or very few trees, really have what you'd call a taproot that goes down more than a couple of feet. So you don't need to worry about that, about loosening it below, because the roots are going horizontal. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah. Cheryl says her unusual chrysanthemums are supposed to be perennial and they just bloomed in a big pot. How can she make them last? How can she make them last? Should she dig them into the garden or overwinter them in the house or take cuttings or what?
I think I would get them in the ground, bury them in mulch, bury them in leaves. If you can get a couple of cuttings off them or a couple of rooted pieces, bring them in the house. Keep them as your insurance. But I think leaving them out probably is the best. Just lots and lots of mulch on top, leaves, lots of leaves.
Rosalind would like to know if you have any tips on a new coralberry that was planted in the fall for winter, like mulching, etc.
You know what? Just like we do with everything, just have a good layer of leaves on the ground. If you don't have leaves, get a couple of bags of shredded bark mulch and mulch the ground with that. What that'll do is help insulate it a little bit. It'll keep the frost from settling in for a little while, give your roots a bit more chance to get established. But in a heavy soil, it also, late plantings can sometimes heave. And as the ground freezes, it can lift root balls up out of the ground a bit. Having a good mulch keeps them covered for the winter.
And Michelle was noting how big Lupin has gotten.
Lupin is getting crazy big. Come on, buddy. Lupin's getting crazy big. He's just over 5 months now. So he's into that terrible toddler stage, I guess, for puppies. But anyway, he's having a good time in the garden. He loves coming to the greenhouse, that's for sure. So we'll be seeing lots more of him around.
All right.
All right, so I guess we'll wrap it up. We're in the month of November. If you're close to the GTA, put November 15th on your calendar. I'll be speaking at the Toronto Botanical Garden on Wednesday, November 15th. Come on out, say hi. It'll be a great talk. It's called 30 Years on the Sand Dune. Basically, the history of our garden, how we cope with our conditions, and how we can help you cope with adverse conditions in your garden. So, should be a great time. Have a look on the TBG website for more information about that. Our trips are out. We're just getting rolling with the information out for our trips. We'll have the website updated in a day or two. May, Chelsea Flower Show, definitely my bucket list. Paul's bucket list. We have not been, so we're really looking forward to it. August, Highlands of Scotland, should be fantastic. We touched into Scotland just in the south when we were there this past summer, so we're really looking forward to getting the whole country in and doing the north of Scotland in August. If you want information about that right away, email Marjorie at masonhousegardens.com or just watch the website for updates about those trips. Other than that, have a great week. It's a great day to garden. The sun's shining, it's warming up, and we'll see you next week on Let's Get Growing Facebook Live.